Hey, welcome to my presentation, a random walk down Clash Royale's creative direction. During this presentation, I'm gonna quickly introduce myself, I'm gonna introduce Supercell, and I will introduce what we are doing there. Then we're gonna quickly move on the first topic, really, which is art versus design. The second topic is Maya, not the software, but more of a concept that I'm gonna introduce to you. And then we will talk about branding. We're then gonna take those two topics and we think about them when designing the game. So we look at the design thinking and how with this design thinking we are making Clash Royale. So I will give you some very concrete example and thought process that I hope will be helpful for you. So first, the introduction. So my name is Brice Laville Saint-Martin. At the very core, I am a 3D character designer, and at Supercell, I work on the creative direction of Clash Royale. At Supercell, as a company, we have one core belief, and this belief is that the best teams make the best games, and the company mission is to create games that are played for years and remembered forever. So we have a couple of games. I will not go too deep into them, but the first one is Clash of Clans. The second one is Brawl Stars. We have another game called Boom Beach, A-Day. And we have now A-Day Pop, which is on soft launch in a couple of countries. And that one is a puzzle game. Maybe you have the opportunity to play it, depending of in what country you are at the moment. And then, of course, then we have Clash Royale. So the game I work on. So Clash Royale is a game where basically you have to collect cards. There is 99 cards at the moment to be collected. And from all those cards, you have to select 8 of them that all the cards have like a different gameplay. So you have to collect 8 of them that you put in your deck or in your hand. And then you go battle with it. So when you go battle with it, you have 3 towers, so the blue towers, and your opponent on the other side of the arena has 3 towers as well. And the goal is basically to defend your towers and take down the towers of your opponent by playing the cards you have selected in your hand. We're gonna see quickly what I work on, then move on the first topic. I was telling you that at the core, I'm a 3D character designer, so here's some characters that I work on. So the LSE Golem, the Ram Rider, the Fisherman, the Rascals, Royal Recruits. Those guys, they are super fun. I really like them. They are basically, when you play them, it's 6 of them that are being deployed on a line. A line which is basically the width of the whole arena. And I found them really fun, and they're kind of, their name is Royal Recruits, and they're like of the intern of the castle, the intern of the king, so a lot of fun things in the stories with them. And we wanted to have even more fun, so you can see that in the design, there's just their little nose going out of the bucket. And actually this bucket is designed, the reference is basically another card, which is the Dark Prince. Since they are basically the recruits of the kingdom, they one day want to be the Dark Prince, so the bucket, so the helmet they have on their head looks like the Dark Prince helmet, but their helmet is made of wood. We more recently we introduced a new card, which is Royal Delivery. It's like a box you send all the way to your opponent side. And then, we put like a Royal Recruit in it. So, for the design of the Royal Delivery, we took kind of, the essence of the Royal Recruits design. And basically, we put one guy in a box. So when you send it over, then, it can crush some maybe skeletons or goblins that are on the way. And a Royal Recruit is being deployed. I work also on... In the game at the moment, the game is running on seasons. So every month there's a new season, and a new season means a new theme. So the theme always need art. We have to theme the game. This one is actually an illustration which is part of the current theme, which is Clash Wars 2, our latest update. So this illustration that I work on with partners was basically, we wanted to show, for the first time to our players how this new feature in the game will look like. So, we wanted to show, so in the future, basically, you are on a boat with your clan and you have to sail up the river to the Colosseum that you can see at the very end of this illustration. We wanted to show like what is it to go through this river and to show the environment around and to give to our players a feeling of that it's gonna be a big journey. And that was this key art, I would say this illustration was used and along the way also for us to develop the feature, and it was a reference for the map, a reference for the cinematic, and so on and so on. So it was a central piece of our latest update, I would say. This is another one from another illustration from the latest season, Clash Wars 2. And this is the moment we wanted to picture the moment where you're gonna arrive finally at the Colosseum and you're about to take your final battle, in this very epic arena and very important arena. So this is showing the last moment, when you are finally, when you're racing with other boats to the dock, and then you go up there and you jump on your final battle. So every season, so every month, we also do a loading screen. So, for us, a loading screen is an important real estate because, as I say, we're gonna have to theme the game, and anyway, at some point, you're gonna have to go through the loading screen. So why not using this time to give you the mood of this new season? And so we do one a month, basically, almost one a month. So this one is the original one, and basically every season we take this one and we're gonna tweak it, we change it, we change the background, we swap some characters to have the new theme. Sometimes we change 20% of it, sometimes we change 80% of it. It really depends. I also worked on hype icon, so this is the latest hype icon, so that's only the second one of Clash Royale. We never changed it before. With the release of Clash Wars 2, we wanted to signal to players that there is a big new feature in the game, and therefore changing the hype icon felt important to us. So this is the new hype icon. I like that one in a way that it's like a promise to our players. The latest hype icon was the Red King screaming. It shows a lot of emotion, and the face was big, which is good, but it didn't kind of give a promise to the players that it's gonna be an epic battle. And I feel like this one is more like there is a duel going on between the Blue King and the Red King, and there's kind of there's a mood already going on, and I like it as well because in a way it's also really esports, and we do esports in Clash Royale, and this one is really much like, I feel like it's esporty, it's like blue and red. Every season also we do to theme the season, we do tower skins. So I was saying previously that you have 3 towers, so 1 king tower and 2 princess towers. So it's also like a kind of a way for us to basically theme the game and custom the experience. So you can collect the tower skin pretty much as you collect the cards. It's a bit different, but you can collect tower skins as well. You can also collect emotes. So this is the Mega Knight tower skin. The Mega Knight is one of our cards, and we wanted to create a Mega Knight tower skin. So this one is the Prince Dream season. Same, it was from one of our past seasons. And I also do some card image. So when you collect the card, you can see a beautiful render of it in the game, but you can also see the card image, which is essentially the icon of the card. So when you play the card, you're also playing, you're playing with the icon. My work is also to basically, I'm trying to keep the game as fresh as possible. So we are working on UI, new ways to show the characters to the players. The characters are, so, every way we can to show our characters and, epic image of the character, I feel like it's really important. To me, when players are playing the characters, they're not playing the little pixel on the screen, but they are more like playing this image they have of the characters, So showing beautiful renders in game is important to me. So right now we are going through refreshing all this content, all those renders to have like renders as epic as possible. Since more recently I work on also cinematics. So cinematics for new characters and seasons, and then some R&D, research and development for real-time animation. So the first topic I wanted to talk about today is art versus design. Art and design are two art forms, but there is one big difference between them, and this difference is the purpose. So to me, art is meant to raise questions within you, to raise questions, and design is meant to actually answer questions, When you enter a museum, you look at the art on the wall or somewhere in the museum, this art is most likely not here to be used, and it's most likely here to give you, to provoke thoughts and provoke emotion within you. And when you look at a piece of design, design is an art form in a way that it has to be ergonomic. Obviously, it's an art form and we want design to be ergonomic. But the first purpose of design is to actually make an object, make a function more clear, clear to the user and understandable to the person who is gonna play with your design or use your design, use your object. And so, there's different type of design. There's like, it could be an object, it could be a function, it could be so many things, and for games, the design is based on the function, and most likely, and this function is the gameplay. So for the video game, for the mobile game and video games, basically we are designing the gameplay, obviously. So good art is, to me, interpreted, and good design to me is understood. So that's what I say, design is an art form, but it's a human-centered art form. It's an art form which is meant for human to understand better how to use the object, how to use the function, and hopefully also to make this function and object ergonomic, also beautiful, I like art, beautiful and ergonomic and so on and so on. And this quest to the best design, depending of your product, this quest is called the design thinking. So in the end, when you take art and design has something that art doesn't have, which is the users. And you really have to think about the users when you are designing a function or object, because ultimately it's gonna make it easy or harder for the users to understand your product, depending on the quality of your design. So the second topic I wanted to touch on today is Maya, and not the software, but more the design concept. But we cannot talk about Maya without talking about the inventor of it, which is Raymond Loewy. So Raymond Loewy was a French designer during the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and even the early 80s. Raymond was designing all sorts of things, from trains to Coca-Cola fountains, to car, to bus, to pencil sharpeners, and many logos that still today you will recognize, like a Lucky Strike logo. And his last project was actually maybe one of his most iconic, was to help NASA designing the first ever space station, So the space station was essentially, a very obviously remote environment, an environment which is not, at the core human friendly. It's just a piece of metal and a lot of electronics and so on and so on. So one of the most famous contribution of Raymond on this project was to actually add, those round windows to the space station to actually connect the humans inside to Earth, so they could not be grounded, but they could still be, in a way, at least visually connected to humanity. People were actually wondering, how is that possible that a person, a designer, could be so successful in designing so many things, so many different things? What is this thing that make him so successful across all his projects? And when Raymond was asked this question, basically his answer was Maya. And Maya stands for most advanced yet acceptable. So because Raymond actually, he was already, he was a very good designer at the time, that the designers didn't add data or couldn't monitor, from a laptop or anything, how the product will be used. So Raymond, basically, when he was designing a train, Raymond would actually spend hundreds of hours riding trains and see how people behave in the train, talk with the people and talk with the users of the train, and to see what are the constraints, what is good, what is bad, just trying to really understand the product. And he will even actually talk with the crew of the train and find out, what's missing. And in that way, it actually found that, the crew didn't add their toilets, so they had to use the toilets of the passenger on the cars, and the crew really wanted to have their toilets, That's what he did. I mean, he added a toilet that the crew wanted, He went on those trains and ride those trains for hours and hours, hundreds of hours, to really understand the needs of people using it, to understand what will be a good design train. And that's exactly what he did. And on top of, so that makes already Raymond a good designer. And on top of that, Raymond understood that, as consumer, we are hungry for the new, but resistant to change. He also understood that humans seek for familiarity because it makes them feel safe. And he also understood that, on the other hand, people want to be surprised. And this rule of Maya, you might know it as, the 70-30, 70% of existent and 30% of innovation, Basically this 70% of familiarity and 30% of innovation in one product. And essentially, that's a very vulgarized way to talk about Maya, but essentially that's what it is, Raymond understood that basically Maya means, to sell something familiar, you have to make it surprising. And on the other hand, to sell something surprising, you have to make it familiar. An example of that, I would say maybe the best example I have in my head is, when Steve Jobs introduced the very first Mac. So, you have to understand that at that time, it was essentially the first time that the general public was seeing a personal computer and this new piece of technology. And during his presentation, there's something that became so iconic, is that he really wanted the computer to talk, He didn't just want to show a screen or numbers or, the code or anything, but he really wanted the computer to present itself to the customers, to the people in the audience at that time in the theater. And that's exactly what happened. And that basically was a beautiful example of Maya, It's something really surprising, a new computer and this new personal computer. But Steve made basically this piece of hardware very familiar, or at least as familiar as possible, by making it talk. You could hear a voice, talking to you. So that was this balance of familiar and surprising for this example. So the third topic I will briefly talk about is branding. So what is branding? Well, branding is essentially the science behind how do you move from being meaningless to being meaningful. How do you move from those black and white geometric shape that tells you nothing else, that they are a square, a triangle, and a circle, to a shape like this one, this still black and white shape that tells you so much more about it, right? When looking at this shape, you might think about Disneyland. You might think about all the beautiful stories. You think about the princesses. You think about the kids. All of this, right? So how you move from this meaningful, meaningless black and white circle to this meaningful black and white shape, and that's all the point. So be careful, because a brand is not a logo, right? The only purpose of the logo is to create actually a mental connection between the product, which the logo is on, and the brand, just to create this connection in your head. That's the purpose of the logo. So a brand, as we say, is this image that you have about a company, about the logo, about the product. It's a belief system. When you look at the Nike logo on a t-shirt, the belief system and belief is very much that it's a product for athletes. It's a product that honors the athletes. It's a product, it's a quality sport gear, and all of this. So a brand, to be clear, a brand is not tangible. You cannot touch it. The brand is not the product. The brand is not the logo. The brand is this belief. Is this belief system you have in your head, is this image of the brand that you have in your head. A brand is crafted by a person or by entity, so entity, a company, and the person, can be anybody. So, and I wanted to say a person here because a person can have a brand itself, okay? And the brand, in a way, stop to exist when people stop believing in it, so it can disappear. So let's actually take the example of Supercell, because we kind of already talked about it in the introduction. So Supercell, so this is our logo, but what is our belief? I said it earlier. So our belief is that the best teams makes the best games, right? That's, part of our branding, right? What I mean for us is that, every day we live by it in a way, it's... we strongly believe it. We strongly believe that the best team makes the best game. So, for example, we are really careful at the hiring. We are really careful at the composition of the team. You might be a good element, but you also need to find the good team for you. It's really the composition of the team. We are really, at Supercell, we are really careful about the composition of the team. So Clash Royale, so this is our logo. So what is our brand, What's the brand of Clash Royale? Our belief is that Clash Royale is a most ridiculous duel. Instead of explaining, I think it's even easier if I show you some example.
These are the rules of the duel. Attacks can come from all directions. So you must keep your eyes open at all times. A most ridiculous duel. Clash Royale. These are the rules of the duel. The giant skeleton wears a silly hat, a backpack, and has a big underbite. Laugh at him at your own risk. A most ridiculous duel. Clash Royale. These are the rules of the duel. Anything goes in the arena, and anything goes inside the goblin hunt. Anything. A most ridiculous duel. Clash Royale. These are the rules of the duel. The grass in the arena must be properly cut. It's a full-time job. That was the rule of the duel. A most ridiculous duel. Clash Royale. These are the rules of the duel. Trumpets must sound when the prince charges into battle. Or when the prince does pretty much anything. Do-do-do-do. 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 That was a rule of the duel. Trumpet! A most ridiculous duel. Clash Royale. These are the rules of the duel. All duels must have appropriately epic music.
Clash Royale! Bigger fights with everyone! Clash Royale! It's got lightning and skeletons. Duel players in real time. Destroy towers in real time.
Warrior troops take a stand, now you've got the upper hand. Destroy the gainer in the ground and play.
That was a rule of the duel. A most ridiculous duel. Clash Royale. These are the rules of the duel. The winner takes the loser's trophies. And their dignity. That was a rule of the duel. A most ridiculous duel. Clash Royale. These are the rules of the duel. You don't bring a knife to a rocket fight. A most ridiculous duel. Clash Royale.
After seeing those cinematics, what you will think about Clash Royale, what the cinematics in a way put in your head, what image is in your head about Clash Royale now because of watching the cinematics, that's the power of the branding, basically. So now when thinking about Clash Royale, you will probably not think about a very serious battle, you know. You will think about more something a bit quirky, a bit fun, you know, a bit funky. You will think about, okay, it's fantasy, but it's like a very fun fantasy. And all this image that now is in your head, and hopefully for long, that's the power of branding of Clash Royale. So now that you have been introduced to those 3 points, those 3 topics, so art versus design, Maya, and branding, we're gonna take a deeper look at Clash Royale, and I'm gonna go through a few examples of how we think, when designing the game. So we're gonna look at the design thinking behind Clash Royale. So obviously, we cannot design anything on Clash Royale without thinking about the gameplay. So we are a game, so the gameplay is what we design, at first. We have to serve the gameplay. If you are in a feature animation, your job is, for example, to serve the story. For a movie, for a feature animation, the main thing is the story. For us in a game, as it's gameplay. So as designers, visual designers, we have to think first at the gameplay, right? In Clash Royale, we have something very specific to Clash Royale, and it's kind of a philosophical concept. It's called playful and serious. So what does that mean? First of all, you might remember that I was telling you that the mission of the company is to make the best games that are played by as many people as possible and played for years and remember forever. So playful and serious is very much, it's here to give a tone to the game, to the product, but a tone that will hopefully touch a maximum number of persons, So the tone of the game is here actually to directly serve the mission of the company. So we hope that by having a playful and serious games, with the playfulness, we can attract many people, and we can touch many people and share the fun. And with the serious, we hope to basically make it important for them. We want them to invest their time and stay with us for as long as possible. Playful and serious. We're gonna look at something which I call the Clashometer. That's something that, we don't really use it every day, but that's the way we think. So what's the Clashometer? So basically is this balance between, which is too serious and what is too playful for us, right? So you can see on this line, you can see in the middle is green, so it's gonna be our sweet spot. And on the left, it's red, and same for the right, it's gonna be red. So on the left, we're gonna take, for example, this World of Warcraft character, which was good, but to us, this kind of design is very serious. Well, by obviously the ratio of the character, by the color used, the palette, by the amount of detail, the posing, the expression, everything, it makes it very serious. I guess for World of Warcraft, that's what they want. They want to attract hardcore players, where we want to attract a more casual audience, right? And on the other end, we're gonna put Mario, Nintendo. And then here we are in the middle. So that's the Barbarian of Clash of Clans and Clash Royale. So here we are in the middle, and the goal of the game, basically, the goal of this Clashometer is, it's a reminder. So when we design new characters, we have to be careful to don't be too much on the left, and being careful to don't be too much on the right, but somewhere in the sweet spot, right? So we're gonna add one game on the left, which is Backyard Monsters, which is a game, Clash of Clans, was inspired by that game. So we're gonna put here, but it was very serious in a way. So we're gonna put this here, Backyard Monsters, and on the other end, just another example of the Smurfs. And then pretty much in the sweet spot, we have Asterix, so Asterix and Obelix from the comic. And Asterix and Obelix, I would say, is our main reference. We do like the world, we find the design fresh, and it has inspired the design of many characters for Clash. I'm gonna add here the Ice Spirit. The Ice Spirit is for me the most playful character in our arsenal. So I'm gonna put it here as an example of the further on the right, and I will add the Night Witch on the left. So I would say it's the most serious character that we have, and already the name Night Witch is already pretty serious, and the design of the Night Witch is somehow dark, a bit spiky. It's really much like on the left of our spectrum. So now that we have those two extremities and the very sweet spot, which is our main character, the Barbarian, when designing characters, we really try to be somewhere between the Night Witch and the Ice Spirit, and hopefully not too further away. Playful and serious, it's really much how we see it is very much as a balance, It's a balance that the character or the piece of art or the brand as a whole has to achieve. So the balance between playful and serious. But the balance can be achieved at different levels, right? For example, the character itself, the character design could be a bit more on the serious hand, but if is acting on a cinematic or the name or anything else, would be more playful, then I think the balance will be achieved, and vice versa as well, right? So it's really much a balance that we think about, not at each level, but as the whole creative, right? The whole character, the name, the design, the color, the acting, even the voice. When you look at the whole, it has to have this balance of playful and serious. one way we achieve this balance, one of our tools that we use then is also the story. On the game team, we don't really think about stories, we don't write stories. The marketing team and the storytelling team will write more stories, but on the game team, we don't write the stories of the characters. What we come up with is, it's more of the personality of the character and some fun facts, And fun facts, we use the fun facts / stories to bring some balance between playful and serious as well. So here is an example of the executioner. The executioner, already by the name, executioner is more on the left, as you can guess, on the left of the spectrum. And the design is somehow fun in a way, but it is still pretty serious. But the fun fact of the executioner is that actually he's vegetarian. He uses axe not to not to cut heads and stuff, but he uses it to cut his fruits and vegetables. This giving some playfulness in the design. I really like this example. I think this example talks a lot by itself. So this concept is by Jonathan Dower, one of the main concept artists that we had on Clash Royale. Yeah, I really like this example. Another tool that we use either for playful and serious and other things, another tool something we have is families. We do have many families in Clash Royale and Clash of Clans, but I will talk about Clash Royale. There is the Forest Gang, there is of course the Royals, there is the Goblins, the Skeletons, the Golems, there is Dragons, there is Machines, many families. And what I want to touch on about the subject of families is not much about playful and serious, but more about, maybe more about the brand. So the brand and Maya, let's talk about brand and Maya in there. We have 99 characters and I don't know how many, maybe like 15 families. Each of these families, they have something special. They have, for example, the Golems, if we take the family of the Golems will always attack the towers. If it's a Golem, the player know that this character will attack the towers. How does the players know that? Well, just because that's something we always do. I mean, that's something we have introduced. That's a rule that we have made ourselves, right? So players nowadays, they know that if a Golem comes to the game, if it's the new character, then it's from the Golem family. They already know a piece of the gameplay, right? And that is, I think that touched to Maya, familiarity and surprise. With the family, we can play on this balance between surprise and familiarity. Another one, for example, the Hog Riders. So the Riders, Ram Rider, Hog Rider, they're also going for the towers. So therefore, if the players know that there is a new rider coming, they will know a piece of the gameplay. The goblins usually, but not the giant goblin. The goblins usually, they are like small creatures, and then they die pretty fast. They don't have a lot of health. But the goblin giant, because it's a goblin giant, and the giant in our brand, a giant is more gonna be of a tank. He has a lot of life, and the giant also goes for towers. So we have the riders, the golems, the giant that goes for towers, right? A goblin giant comes to the game. Already by the name, if you know a bit about the game, you might understand what this card is about. It's a giant. It's gonna go for a tower, and there is one big goblin. That's the giant. And then if you look at the art, there's two goblins on top of it, and those goblins are spare goblin. They're gonna shoot all the cards around. My point is that we use family to introduce a new surprising mechanic, a new surprising card, a new surprising design, but we still use a familiar family, you know, so it's not totally new every time. Of course, totally new cards are sometimes coming in the game, but yeah, we try to achieve a balance. Also, but with the families, you know, something very, very important that we introduce in our brand, in our game, in our brand, are the legacies. I just talk about it in a way. You know, the legacies are, you know, those very arbitrary rules or things that we introduce in the brand. Like I was telling you, you know, that the golems goes for the towers, the goblins are green, the royals have some gold on them, all these kind of things. You know, there is, for example, this legacy of the golem that has this very specific jaw, and which are almost the same for all the golems. So legacies. I would say that legacies, you know, there are very arbitrary rules that in the world, but I find them quite important for the brand and for the world, because it makes the world, in a way, it makes the world more believable, you know. There is rules, you know, in this world. It's not just, I mean, you know, there's some rules in there, right? There's some legacies, there's some roots. So now we're just gonna look at the firecracker, which is one of our cards. And we're just gonna pinpoint some elements and quickly talk about them. The first thing you have to know about the firecracker is that, so in Clash Royale, we have one family, which is the villagers. So those are the cards that comes from Clash of Clans game. So in that case, that was the archer. And we have also the forest gang. You know, the forest gang in Clash Royale is kind of they're kind of the rogue character, you know, the rebels that doesn't want to be in the kingdom. They just want to be, you know, in their forest and living their life away from the royals, from the kingdom. Think about them, about, you know, like if they are the rebels. So, you know, we wanted to create then a card which is a mix of the archer, the villager, and a forest gang character. So what we did is, well, we combined basically the designs. So here you can see that we kept the legacy of the archer. So we kept very much the hair shape, the hair color of the archer. We kept the original face, even though we did a bit of a lifting, but you will recognize the archer, you know, it's still the archer face. So, you know, if you're a player, you know it's an archer, you know, the shape of the hair, the color, you know it's an archer. Then we have introduced some forest gang design elements, like, you know, so a bit darker tone. I would say the forest gang are a bit darker and a bit more green because they are from the forest and they are the rebels and stuff. So yeah, you can see the hood, the dark hood, the gloves. This is directly from the outfit of the forest gang, the rascals, for example. The shoes, and the forest gang shoes. So she's a firecracker, so basically she's firing a firework, right? So in Clash of Clans, they have air defense, which are fireworks. So we just decided to take, you know, to don't reinvent the wheel again, but to take one of the legacy of our brand, you know, something that has been introduced in our brand, and to reuse it, to very much to make it more believable, and it's kind of also an Easter egg in a way. So the Clash of Clans air defense. And then this character, in the firecracker, I was saying that in general, you know, the forest gang, they don't have gold on them, because gold is for the royals, it's a bit more expensive, and those are more like the young people in the forest, you know, the rebels, kind of a Robin Hood vibe, you know, that might not have the gold, but this character actually have a golden belt, and this is directly from the original design of the archer. The original archer has the golden belt, so we wanted to keep it anyway, because it's kind of part of the story, you know. She's rogue, she's not rebels, but she's still the archer in a way, right? So she comes with the belt, and this is just a story. So the name, I wanted to talk about the names because if you know a bit the world of Clash Royale, you will know that none of the characters has his own name in a way. That we have the barbarian, we have the archer, we have the golems, we have elixir golem, all of this, ice golem, but we don't call our characters, I don't know, Bob or anything like this, right? This is very much on purpose, and because we use the name also the name for us is very much part of the design, not just the storytelling, but we use the name to make sure that the players understand better what the character is about, even without playing it, even without playing it. So, if we call our character Bob, well, we release Bob and imagine we have 99 cards. So the players are gonna have to remember 99 names, and it's gonna be really hard for them to remember the gameplay and the card, So for now, let's call this character the Storm Smasher Monster. Okay, that sounds epic. That sounds cool. But first, worry, this name is way too long and it's probably not gonna fit the UI of our game. So that's the first problem. But that's not the essential problem. The bigger problem is that, as I say, it's not telling anything about the gameplay whatsoever. So we're gonna remove Storm Smasher, even though that sounds good, maybe not for our game, not for our design thinking. So let's remove Storm Smasher. So now what we have is the monster. Sounds good, that will fit the UI, but still, it's not giving us any clue about the gameplay of this character. This character, you can visually, you can see that he is purple and is made of elixir in Clash Royale is important because, to play the cards, basically you are paying elixir. So you pay maybe like 5 of elixir to play a card. I mean, it's kind of the currency to trade a card. This guy is made of elixir somehow. We don't know yet. He's made of elixir. So let's call him the Elixir Monster. Alright, so now this name is linking to his design, but still Monster doesn't tell me too much about the gameplay. So let's remove Monster, and now we're gonna replace Monster by Golem. So now we have the Elixir Golem. So now this one is pretty interesting. It's really interesting because Elixir Golem. So the Golem, as I was telling you, you know that the Golem is gonna go for the tower. You know that the Golem has a lot of HP, and you can see, just by looking at the design here on the left, you can see that he's a big guy. It looks like he's gonna smash something, maybe a tower. And he has this jaw that the Golem has as well, the original Golem. And then you have this world, Elixir. So it's the Elixir Golem. So there is something in the gameplay going on with Elixir, obviously. And this something is that if you play the Golem and your opponent kill the Golem fully, then your opponent is gonna receive 4 of Elixir. So there's a mechanic with the Elixir. So now we're just gonna remove and we're just gonna keep Elixir Golem. It's slick. And Elixir Golem, it's very much what it is, What you see is what you get. That's something we say pretty often. So the Golem is gonna go for a tower, and there's something to do with the Elixir. There's a mechanic to do with the Elixir. We actually do this thinking, this design thinking, to make sure that people will be able to remember 99 cards, the gameplays of 99 cards, without too much effort. Now I'm just gonna talk about, imperfect world, and very quickly, it's just a very arbitrary rule we have put ourselves, and we live by it in a way. We continue to carry that legacy, that is in our brand. We might add some notch, here and there, like on this sword. The clothes of our characters might not be all clean, maybe they're a bit dirty, here and there. There's always some stuff that are being destroyed because of Clash of Clans. The game, the goal of Clash of Clans is to destroy your opponent village. So there is always something like going wrong, something being destroyed, someone attacking. It's an imperfect world. And carrying that this arbitrary rule is also helping to build a believable world. Another rule that we have is that the world is handmade. There is no factories whatsoever in the world of Clash and Clash Royale. Everything is handmade, very much by the builder. So we have this character which comes from Clash of Clans, which is called the builder, and in the brand and in the game is the character that rebuilds your village after it's being attacked, right? Or is the one upgrading your town hall or anything, your walls with his armor. And the story goes that he is the characters that, if there is a machine which is being built, he's gonna build it with his little hands, right? So it's made of wood, it's made of little piece of metal, some screw here and there, and it has this feeling of it's handmade. That's like an arbitrary rule, as I said. Then I would like to talk about hierarchy. So hierarchy is, I would say, it's more on the visual side of the design thinking, very much more on the visual side. But still I want to talk about it because it's another example among many others, obviously, how we can achieve a better design. So by hierarchy, I mean, we make sure that, our characters, but not just our characters, our buildings, our environment, very much everything, but here we're going to talk about characters. We are making sure that they are simple, that they are digestible, they are interesting, and at every reading level. Because since we are doing mobile game, we know that players are gonna look at our characters on a small device, obviously, on a small screen, even though they're getting bigger and bigger, but on small screens. But they're also gonna look at it on their computer, through a cinematic that they might look on their computer or even on the TV. So we really try to be simple, digestible, and interesting at every reading level, so every different size. So here is an example. So this character is the trader. Trader, what he does? He trade. So that's a character which is gonna trade with you in the game, in Clash of Clans, and soon in Clash Royale. So you can see here in small size, even in the small size, there's not much noise. There is, a mass of green. You can clearly see the head. You can clearly see the eyes. You can see that there's something important in his hand, and you don't see much of the legs, right? The legs are somehow very dark and tiny, because in Clash Royale and Clash of Clans, the camera is 45 degree and looking down at 45 degree. So most of the time, actually, in our game, at least, you don't see the legs of the characters. That's why also here in the render they are dark and small. But now if we take this character and we make him a bit bigger, now he's a bit bigger, and now you can see more of him. You can see, so that might be maybe in a render in the game, right? So you can see now that, okay, you can see what he wants to sell you, obviously. You can clearly see his clothes. You can see even his golden teeth, tooth that you couldn't see on the previous reading level, because if you could see it on the previous reading level, it would have been noise, You can clearly see his expression and so on and so on. Then there is the bigger reading level, from closer, this one, where you can see now that, okay, if you zoom in even more, it's interesting even though we are really close. So you can see that the leather from the bag has some textures, The cloth has a texture as well, You can see the knit, you can see the rope has some textures, But you couldn't really see it on the previous reading level, right? You cannot see it on the previous reading level because we don't want those details to be a noise for this second level, but we want those details to bring something interesting, even though we are zooming in a cinematic, for example, right? So if the camera goes closer from our character, we still want to bring something interesting. So the first level for the in-game, you distinguish the character. You don't see much of the detail, but you still understand the posing. The second level, you see more of the character, you see more of the colors, you see more of everything. And the third level, even close, there is some details. So obviously, also for the posing, so this one, this posing has lighting and everything. So for the lighting and also the value of our texturing, you can see that the bottom of the character is pretty dark, and it goes brighter and brighter as you go up. And the brightest part of the character is the eyes, because obviously we want the audience to look at the eye of our character for obvious reasons. That's where the emotions come from and everything. For this posing, basically, this posing was very much about, we wanted to show the mood of the character. He wants to sell you something. He is the trader. So we want to attract the attention on the subject of the posing. I mean, on the bottle. So the artists have used a very pink hue, which is contrasting completely with the rest of the character, so attracting the attention. And here you can also see the saturation level of each color. So where we want to attract the attention, then the saturation is also higher. And all of this is very much to put the focus where we want it to be. So we want our players to understand what we have to tell them. We want our players to understand the design and the purpose of this character. We want the players to understand the posing, So all of this is very much about focusing the attention at the right moment, at the right place. Now we're gonna take another example, the Elixir Golem. I mean, we're gonna go back to the Elixir Golem and we're gonna deconstruct it. So we say that its name is Elixir Golem, and the name is looping back to the visual design, to what you see, and what you see then, and the name is looping back to the gameplay. So in a way, the name, the visual design, and the gameplay make sense all together. The Elixir Golem has also very, very few elements on him, Is basically, we can see as him like a naked character with just two things on his wrist. The design is very straightforward. We have something also different games call it differently, but on Clash Royale we call it the hook. And the hook of our characters is something that is very specific to one character, okay? The hook is what makes the character special, and most likely you will not have two similar hooks. The hook of this character is color. His overall color is really flashy in a way, it's pink. Purple is the color of the elixir, This color is the legacy of the elixir, In the brand, we use this color only when we want to talk about the elixir. So the elixir icons, the elixir golem, the elixir pump, which is a building on Clash Royale and Clash of Clans, this color, this purple. Another hook, for example, another hook of a character could be the fisherman. And the fisherman, for example, he has an anchor, a huge anchor, and the shape and the color of the anchor makes it, in a way, pretty special, and that's the hook of the character, and so on and so on. So there's few elements, but we have, those drops of elixir. It's kind of the character is kind of melting. If you look at the cinematic, it's the VFX on the cinematics is even more obvious that it's really liquid and is melting. For the game, we wanted to have more of a toyish, design without heavy FX and everything. And yeah, I mean, those drops, they are directly, as you understood, coming from the elixir aspect. Now the head shape. So the shape of the head comes from actually the icon of the elixir. In the game, we have an icon for the elixir drop. Then we wanted the head of the elixir golem to look like, in a way, the elixir drop that players know. We have this gameplay element, which are the color of the wrist, blue or red. So those elements, those pieces of fabric and metal, basically. So in Clash Royale, there's two sides, basically. When you play the game, you are blue, and your opponent is always red. So, when there is a lot going on the battlefield, we want the players to be able to recognize which one are which character, is it my character, is it your character? So the blue elixir golem, so your elixir golem has this blue element on him, and most of the character, I would say 95% of the characters have this color variance, which is very much because of gameplay. We want to make it easy for the players to understand which one is their elixir golem. And as I said before, the shape of the jaw is directly coming from the family legacy of the golems. The golems have this very strong jaw, which have pretty much the same shape. So this is directly coming from legacies that we have established earlier in the game, in the brand. And then I would say that the balance between playful and serious for this character come from his posing, his acting, and his colors. I would say his color is very playful in a way. It's very playful. This really pink, purple, to me is kind of playful. And then his posing is pretty serious. And then his acting on the cinematic. If you look at the cinematic later on, the cinematic he's acting almost like a baby. He cannot talk. He's just moaning in a way, and that makes him cute at some point. But directly in the cinematic, he's smashing the tower. To me, the playful and serious balance is met. And then as a final note of this presentation, I would like to say only two things, and those two things that are important for us, and I hope also for you at this moment, or even more after the presentation, is that serve your users and build your brand. So yeah, thanks a lot everybody.